They told you the end of the world would come with fire and ruin. They said it would be punishment, a divine reckoning written in the stars. But what if they were wrong? What if the true apocalypse is not destruction, not the end, but a new beginning? Long before doomsday prophecies filled holy books and headlines, the ancient Gnostics told of a secret revelation, a prophecy so subversive it was buried beneath centuries of silence. In their cosmology, they said the world you see was not shaped by the true God, but by a lesser creative force, the demiurge, a being the ancients described as Sakla, the fool, and within that illusion, humanity sleeps, unaware that something eternal still burns within them. But the Gnostic prophecy of the end times isn't one of fear and doom, like the one you've always been taught. According to the hidden texts, the unveiling is not the end of creation. It is the end of deception, the lifting of the veil, a revelation of what you truly are. You've always felt it deep down, the quiet knowing that reality is beginning to crack, that the old stories can no longer stand against the rising tide of consciousness. The Gnostics foresaw this exact moment. They said that when the material dream begins to crumble, the divine spark within humanity would begin to stir, awakening from the long amnesia of matter and illusion. But this remembrance comes with resistance, for as the light rises, the powers of illusion fight harder to keep their dominion intact. These are the archons, hidden forces that early mystics claimed were feeding on ignorance, weaving confusion into the human mind. But even their reign has an expiration date, because according to Gnostic revelation, a new light is returning, what the ancient texts call the illuminator of knowledge, a force that reappears throughout the ages to remind humanity of its divine spark. So the end of the age, they said, is not a fall from grace, but a return to it. In this video, you'll discover what these ancient writings really reveal about humanity's true destiny, and why that revelation not only turns every belief about the apocalypse upside down, but unlocks the hidden reason you're alive right now. To grasp the meaning of this prophecy, we have to return to a time when remembering the truth was heresy. Between the 2nd and 4th centuries CE, small circles of mystics scattered across the ancient world began speaking of a reality far beyond the one we know. They called themselves Gnostics, those who know. Not believers, not followers, but knowers, seekers of a truth that could not be contained by temples or scriptures. Their writings, later buried in the sands of Egypt, were rediscovered in 1945, the Nag Hammadi Library, a collection of scrolls that would rewrite everything we thought we knew about the early spiritual world. Hidden among them was the apocalypse of Adam, a revelation said to come directly from the first man himself. But in this version of the story, Adam was not a sinner cast out of Eden. He was a being of light who descended from a higher Aeon, the Pleroma, the realm of divine fullness. His fall was not moral, it was cosmic. He and Eve were luminous beings who had once walked in glory. But when they entered the material world, their light was dimmed, the Gnostics said, by a lesser creator known as the demiurge, the blind craftsman who mistook himself for the source. This was the beginning of illusion. In Gnostic belief, the true God, infinite and beyond all form, did not create this world of opposites and decay. They said it was the demiurge who shaped it and set the powers of illusion to guard it. Humanity's divine spark was imprisoned in flesh, trapped within the cycle of birth and death, the dream mistaken for the real. But the Gnostics also spoke of a promise, a time when remembrance would return. They called this time the final Aeon, a period when humanity would reclaim their divine birthright and the illusion would begin to dissolve. In the apocalypse of Adam, the prophecy unfolds through a series of cosmic events: floods, visitations, wars between realms, all metaphors for consciousness rising and falling through ages. The flood, they said, was not punishment for sin, but in their view, an attempt by a jealous lesser god to erase those who carried the light of knowledge, a symbolic war on Gnosis itself. But not all were lost. Those who carried the hidden light survived, guided by messengers from the higher Aeons. The text even names a mysterious figure, the Illuminator of Knowledge, who appears again and again throughout time, bringing remembrance to humanity when the darkness grows thickest. And always the cycle repeats: fall and revelation, concealment and awakening, illusion and liberation. The Gnostics called this the divine spiral, history not as a straight line toward revelation, but as a pattern of remembering and forgetting played out across worlds. The power behind these revelations was precisely why they were buried, because a humanity that remembers its own divinity cannot be ruled, and a world that sees through illusion cannot be controlled. But hidden beneath centuries of fear, empire, and dogma, the prophecy survived, waiting for the moment it would rise again. And as the world grows more chaotic, flooded with confusion and noise, that ancient prophecy is whispering once more. But what does it actually reveal about our destiny? And what did the Gnostics truly mean by the end of the world? The answer to those questions doesn't just pierce the heart of the illusion, it reveals what reality itself has been hiding from you. The Gnostics never saw the apocalypse as destruction. They saw it for what the word truly means: a revelation, the moment truth, long hidden, comes into view. In Greek, apocalypsis means to unveil, and the Gnostics said this unveiling doesn't happen to the planet, but to the mind, when perception itself begins to awaken. This is the heart of the Gnostic prophecy, that the world will end when humanity remembers who it really is. According to the apocalypse of Adam, this world is not the stage of divine creation. It's a field of testing, a cosmic classroom designed by forces that want you to forget your origin. The Demiurge, that blind architect of matter, crafted this world as a reflection of the true divine realm, but distorted, inverted, and incomplete. And yet, hidden inside each human being, a spark of the pleroma still glows. It cannot be destroyed, only buried. That spark is your awareness, the silent witness behind your thoughts. It is what the Gnostics called the imperishable seed, the fragment of eternity that even the lower powers cannot touch. But here's where the prophecy becomes more profound. They said that when enough sparks awaken, when enough humans begin to remember, the entire illusion begins to fade under its own weight. The closing of the illusion is not the end of life, it's the end of forgetting. The flood of Genesis, they said, was not a punishment for sin, but a war against remembrance. The lesser creator, terrified that humanity might reclaim divine knowledge, unleashed the waters to drown it out. But certain souls, carriers of the hidden flame, survived. They became the ancestors of those who would one day awaken again. From their lineage, the texts tell us, emerged 400,000 souls of light scattered through time, hidden among ordinary people, waiting for the signal to remember. The prophecy says that these souls would help dissolve the dominion of the lower powers simply by recognizing their true divine origin. That time, they hinted, would come at the end of the age, known as the last Aeon. But awakening doesn't come as a single event. It arrives in waves through teachers, messengers, and inner revelations. The apocalypse of Adam speaks of a mysterious figure who appears 3 times throughout cosmic history, the Illuminator of Knowledge. Not one man, but a recurring embodiment of truth, a light that enters the dream whenever darkness reaches its peak, reminding us that it is always darkest before the dawn. Each time, he comes not to save the world, but to remind it of what it already knows. And here's the revelation few understand. The Illuminator is not a single being. It is a current of consciousness moving through time. It is the same light that animated the prophets, the mystics, the rebels of every age. and it also lives in you. When you remember, even for a moment, you become part of that current. You become the prophecy fulfilled. This is why the world fights hardest when you begin to see, because every awakening weakens the illusion. And right now, in this moment of human history, as chaos rises, as old systems give way, as truth feels distorted and unstable, that's what the Gnostics said would precede the great unveiling. The Gnostics said the world would not end. Only the false world built on deception would, when the structures of illusion can no longer sustain themselves. But to truly understand what's unfolding, you must see the deeper mechanism behind it. Because when you realize the end is not destruction, but the light reclaiming its forgotten reflection, everything changes. Every awakening calls forth its shadow, and the moment the light begins to rise, opposing forces awaken as well. These forces, the archons, as the Gnostics called them, weave illusion through human thought. Their creator, the demiurge, was said to rule not through violence, but through belief, convincing humanity that matter is all that exists, and that salvation must be sought outside the self. But this too is part of the test. In the Gnostic vision, these forces are not demons to fear. They are the keepers of the labyrinth. They rule the dream until the dreamer remembers it is dreaming. And that moment of remembrance, when the illusion can no longer deceive you, is the beginning of liberation. The Apocalypse of Adam reveals that as the divine spark awakens within humanity, the lower forces panic. They ask their ruler, "What is the power of these humans who stand in your presence, who were taken from the seed of light? They have overturned the dominion of your hand." In other words, the very act of awakening threatens the entire architecture of illusion. The prophecy describes this as a great cosmic disturbance, a shaking not of the earth, but of consciousness itself. And then, something extraordinary happens. A blinding mist covers the veiled heavens. The eyes of the blind rulers darken. Their eons begin to crumble. Fire, light, and wind sweep across the cosmic structure, not as destruction, but as dissolution. The Gnostics said this fire is not punishment, but purification. It burns away everything unreal, every false identity, every illusion, every lie about who and what you are. And from above the collapsing heavens, luminous clouds of light descend. They carry messengers, radiant beings the text names Abrais, Sablo, and Gamaliel. They are not angels of wrath, but rescuers of remembrance, archetypal forces sent to lift the awakened souls beyond the reach of the lower powers. The text says, "They will be like those angels, for they are not strangers to them, but they work in the imperishable seed." You were never a stranger to the higher realms, you came from them. And when the false world dissolves, those who remember do not perish, they return. This is the real meaning of revelation, not judgment, but return, not damnation, but recognition. Even death, the Gnostic said, is only a veil, a trick of perception that supports the illusion of separation. But for those who remember, they pass through it untouched. In this final revelation, a holy baptism is described, not of water, but of knowing. This is the baptism of those who know the eternal knowledge, the text says, through the living water. The living water is consciousness itself, the current of divine awareness that washes away forgetfulness. It is the ultimate initiation, to be submerged in the truth of your own origin until nothing unreal remains. And as this light spreads, as more and more beings awaken, the material cosmos itself begins to fade like a dream upon waking. The sun and moon lose their power, the heavens unravel, and the architects of illusion fade into the light from which they came. And what remains is the eternal. The Gnostics taught that this final dissolution is not something to fear, but to welcome. It is the lifting of the last veil, the revelation that there was never separation to begin with. because the light that returns to the source was never truly lost. It only forgot where it came from. And this is humanity's destiny, not to escape the world, but to awaken within it until the illusion of separation disappears. And that's where this prophecy becomes more than myth or ancient text. It becomes your invitation to remember. So what does all of this truly mean for you, sitting in this small eternity between matter and spirit? The Gnostics would tell you that prophecy is not written in the stars above, but within the gaze that looks at them. The real unveiling begins not in the sky, but in perception. Each time you doubt the surface of things, each time you stop running from the silence inside you, a piece of the old world falls away. The illusion does not shatter with thunder. It dissolves through awareness. The living water the ancient texts spoke of is not something to seek. It flows quietly whenever you are still enough to feel it. The current of consciousness that was never born and will never die. You touch it in those breathless spaces between thoughts, in the calm that watches storms of emotion pass. That stillness is your divine spark, the fragment of the pleroma shimmering through human form. If the archons feed on forgetfulness, noise, and fear, then the opposite, awareness and presence, starves them of their lifeblood. Every time you remember that you are not the thought, but the one who sees the thought, their web loosens a little more. Remembrance was always the true ritual, not a ceremony, not a creed, but a simple noticing. When anger moves through you, it is only energy seeking its way home. When fear appears, look gently at the one who is afraid, and in that looking, the fear thins into light. This is baptism, not of water, but of knowing. No priest can give it, no temple can contain it. It happens in the quiet recognition of what you have always been. The Gnostics guarded this secret beneath their symbols and myths, that salvation is not an escape, but a remembering. The world doesn't change before remembrance. It only changes once remembrance returns. And as each soul remembers, the illusion crumbles more. The prophecy calls this the return of the light, when sparks awaken across the dream, igniting others who are ready to see. Perhaps it begins in an ordinary moment, the hush before dawn, the pause before a word, the sacred space between thoughts. There, the same light that once moved through Adam and Eve before the fall, through Noah's lineage, through the illuminator of knowledge, stirs again within you. When that light looks through your eyes, the world is no longer something to fix or flee. It reveals itself as what it has always been, a divine field pretending to be asleep. And you, the dreamer who remembers, becomes its mirror. The prophecy fulfills itself quietly, not in fire, but in recognition. And if you want to go deeper into this remembrance, you can download my free ebook, Escaping the Illusion, a Gnostic guide to mastering reality. Inside, you'll find simple yet powerful methods to quiet the mind, deepen awareness, and live from the divine spark within. You'll find the link in the description. The prophecy was never about the end in a literal sense. It was always about the end of forgetting. The Gnostics tried to tell us it was never destruction. It's a sacred unveiling where the false dissolves and the real steps forward. They saw humanity not as a fallen species waiting for salvation, but as divine fragments of light slowly remembering their origin. And when enough of those fragments awaken, when the spark inside every soul begins to burn with the memory of home, the illusion loses its hold and the dream of separation ends. This is the Gnostic prophecy revealing humanity's true destiny, not to perish, but to transform, not to await rescue, but simply to remember. Because the end times were never meant to terrify you, they were meant to free you. The fire they spoke of is not the flame of destruction, it's the fire of recognition. It's burning right now inside you, stripping away everything that isn't true. The flood is not punishment. It's consciousness washing through illusion, cleansing the mind of its ancient sleep. And the return is not the arrival of something new. It's the remembrance of what was never gone. You are that remembrance. The Illuminator walks again, but not as one being, as many, as every soul who dares to wake. The luminous clouds of the prophecy are already descending, not from the heavens above, but from within the human heart. Every act of awareness, every moment of compassion, every breath taken in truth, is light returning to itself. As you continue to witness the chaos of the world, remember not to spiral into fear and reaction, because behind it all, something sacred and extraordinary is emerging. The prophecy is not in the future, it's happening right now, through you. And as the old story ends, the divine remembers itself through your eyes. There is nothing to fear, only revelation, light, and return. If this message resonated with you, help it reach others by liking this video and subscribing to the Gnostic Eye. And share your reflections in the comments. Did these words help you see beyond fear? The light was never lost. It was only waiting for you to remember.